Just a couple of years ago, Texas A&M made headlines when they signed one of the most insane recruiting classes in football history. It was reported they spent millions of dollars on this class, and Texas A&M literally signed practically every 5-star imaginable. They had a total of 30 high school recruits and 2 transfers for the 2022 cycle, and of these 30 players, only 17 are left on the team. Everybody knows about A&M's 2022 class, but what happened to each one of them? Well, in today's video, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go through every player who was a part of that A&M 2022 class, talk about what happened to them and where they are now. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Texas A&M's insane 2022 recruiting class. Okay, so the first guy is Jaden Scarlett. He was a defensive lineman, and he was a 3-star recruit and the number 91 defensive lineman in the class of 2022. But he sat out the entirety of the 2022 season and did not enroll at A&M until 2023. He was a reserve lineman in 2023 and only got on the field against Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl. He's not listed on the depth chart for the 2024 season, but is listed on A&M's official roster, so he's going to be a depth piece for them this upcoming year. The second guy is Mark Nabeau. He was a 3-star recruit and the number 24 interior offensive lineman in the class of 2022 and was from the state of Washington, and before that was from Fiji. He was redshirted his true freshman season and started at left guard against Florida and had some time on the field against UMass. The following year in 23, he started at left guard and at center for the Aggies and helped them put up multiple 200-yard rushing games against both Auburn and Arkansas. He's slated to be the team's starting center or guard this upcoming season, and in a class that contained multiple 4-star offensive linemen, he's shown to be the most impressive. Up next is Jared Kerr. He was a 3-star recruit and the number 42 safety in the class of 2022, and he was a surprise breakthrough player in 2022 as a true freshman. He ended up starting 3 games, playing in 11, and had a total of 22 tackles and a sack. The following year in 2023, he played in all 12 games as a reserve safety, starting 2, and had a game against Mississippi State where he had 4 tackles and a sack. In total in 2023, he finished with 20 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and should continue to come off the bench and be a force for the Aggies. Honestly, it's kind of weird that 2 guys who are lower ranked are still playing with them. Next is Ish Harris. He was a 3-star recruit and the number 46 linebacker in the class of 2022, but was mostly an athlete. He considered playing running back and pretty much everything else on defense, but did not play at all as a true freshman. He then redshirted and decided to enter the transfer portal, and after initially committing to UCF, he flipped to Houston before the start of the season and had a good spring camp with them. But in May of 2023, he was actually released from the spring roster, leading some to believe he was going to go the JUCO route because of bad grades. But I was not able to find where he went online, and it feels like he's out of football potentially. Up next, we have another linebacker, and that is Martrell Harris. He was a 3-star recruit and the number 45 linebacker in the class, and he was a situational linebacker in 12 games his true freshman year. He finished with 7 total tackles and 2 sacks, and then this past season as a sophomore, he played in 10 games, mostly in relief duty, and finished with a nearly identical stat line. He'll start in 2022 behind Torian York, Chance Johnson, and Scooby Williams on the depth chart, and will hopefully make his way onto the field, but he is still with the team. Up next, we have their first 4-star recruit we're going to talk about, and that is Theo Mellon Ostrom. I really hope I said that right, but he was a 4-star recruit and the number 16 tight end in the class of 2022. He's actually one of the more interesting prospects in the draft, as he went to RIG Academy in Stockholm. He then made the transition to American football, and while he hasn't found the field yet for the Aggies, part of that might be the difference between American and Swedish football. The SEC is a little bit different. But he still has time to develop, and he's not listed on the A&M depth chart at the moment, but he'll be a redshirt sophomore and is going to be a developmental piece. After that, we have Noah Thomas. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 40 wide receiver in the class of 22, and he's crazy tall. He's 6'6", and his frame was just too big to keep off the field his freshman year, and he'd play in 11 games in 2022, making 4 starts. He was a bit of a gem for the Aggies, catching 5 passes for 51 yards and a touchdown, and then this past year, he solidified himself as the receiver of the future in College Station, grabbing 6 passes for 74 yards and 3 touchdowns against New Mexico in the season opener, and finishing the year with 29 catches for 359 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's the nephew of NFL legend Mike Singletary, and this was a huge win, as he's one of the recruits who's actually panned out and has legit NFL interest, and he kind of reminds me of Johnny Wilson from Florida State. The next guy is Bobby Taylor. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 25 corner in the class of 2022. He did not play at all in 2022, as he was redshirted in a pretty stacked corner room. He only found the field during the next season, as he played in the opener against New Mexico, recording a single tackle. Sadly, he has been removed from A&M's spring roster though, and it looks like he won't play the upcoming season for the Aggies and might be out of football entirely. There's not much else to say about Bobby Taylor, and he might be a bust. After that, we have to talk about Hunter Erb. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 12 offensive tackle in the class of 2022, and he did not play at all during the 2022 season and played one game in 2023. With transfers like Armaj Adams-Reed coming in, it's not likely we'll see Erb play anytime soon, and he's currently projected to be a third-string right tackle. There's not much to say about him, but considering his scouting ranking, he was probably overrated, but there is always time for him to turn it around or transfer to a school where he could get more of an opportunity. Next, we have to talk about Donovan Green. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 5 tight end in the class of 2022, and he was a College Football News Freshman All-American Honorable Mention, in which he played 10 games, starting 4 of them. In total, he had 22 receptions for 233 yards and 2 scores, but sat out the entirety of the 2023 season in favor of Jake Johnson while he redshirted. He's now projected to be A&M's starting tight end this upcoming season, but is essentially coming off the bench cold. He played well in the past, but we'll see if he lives up to his 4-star potential. Another interesting player is Marquise Groves Killebrew. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 15 corner in the class of 2022, and he's had a bit of a crazy career so far. As a true freshman with A&M in 2022, Marquise managed to have 2 tackles in 3 games. After the 2022 season, he decided to enter the transfer portal and spent 2023 with Louisville. He appeared in 4 games for the Cardinals, but did not record a single stat. So because of that, he hit the transfer portal once again and ended up at Arizona for the 2024 season. We'll see if he reaches his 4-star potential in the Big 12, but for now it looks like he might be a huge bust if he's on his 3rd team in just 2 years. The next guy is Le'Veon Moss. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 5 running back in the class, and as a reserve running back his freshman season, he actually got some time on the field. He played in 7 games and had 72 rushing yards and a touchdown against UMass. As a whole, he finished 2022 with 114 yards on 27 carries and recorded his first career touchdown. In 2023, he ended up being their leading rusher in a stable of running backs, carrying the ball 86 times for 439 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's projected to once again be their starting running back this season, so he was one of the better signings they had in 2022 after all. For some odd reason, A&M decided to sign 3 tight ends in their class, and all of them were 4 stars. The highest ranked was Jake Johnson. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 3 tight end in his class, and was obviously the brother of Max Johnson, a former big quarterback who had just transferred in from LSU. At 6'6", Jake had great frame for the tight end position, and the Aggies were excited to use him in the passing game. As a true freshman, he played in 5 total games, but only caught 1 pass for 2 yards. In 2023, he became one of A&M's starting tight ends, but played in all 12 games, catching 24 passes for 235 yards and 4 touchdowns. But when Max Johnson hit the transfer portal after the 23 season, Jake did as well. He ended up following his older brother to North Carolina, and they will both be Tar Heels for the upcoming season. Cam Dewberry was a 4-star recruit and the number 3 offensive tackle in the class, and he appeared in 7 games as a true freshman, starting all 5 of them. He was a gem in that recruiting class and was actually named a 2022 Freshman All-American by The Athletic. He moved up to playing swing guard the next year and primarily was a backup in all 13 games, but did start 3 at left and right guard for the Aggies. He allowed 2 sacks against Louisiana Monroe and had some moments where he doesn't read the pressure well, and he's still learning and is one of A&M's better offensive linemen and will hopefully push for a starting spot his junior campaign. Jacoby Matthews was a 4-star recruit and the number 8 safety in the class, and he was a standout linebacker to safety convert as a true freshman. He switched positions and played in 10 total games, starting the last 3 of them for the Aggies. He totaled 25 tackles, 15 of which were solo, and a fumble recovery. He played in 11 games in 2023, starting 9 of them, and totaled 42 tackles, with 32 of them being solo, a half sack, and an interception. However, after spring practices in 2024, he decided to enter the transfer portal, and as of making this video, he has not announced a destination as of yet. He's a good player, but A&M could just not keep him around. Bryce Anderson was a 4-star recruit and the number safety in the class of 2022, and he was a standout backup his true freshman year, recording 28 tackles, 16 of which were solo, and a forced fumble. He was named the 2022 Dave Campbell Texas Football Defensive Freshman of the Year and entered 2023 as the starting safety for A&M. He finished with a total of 55 tackles, 4 pass deflections, as well as an interception and a fumble. He's probably one of the more successful signings of this A&M class and should continue to be a solid player on defense for the upcoming season. After that, we have to talk about Malik Sila. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 7 edge rusher in the class of 2022, and he needed some development time before he would reach his full potential in College Station. But he was a good enough athlete that he played in all 12 games for A&M his true freshman year, but would mostly get on special teams. He recorded a total of 6 tackles and a sack and entered 2023 as one of the team's reserve defensive linemen. But he enjoyed a bit of a breakout season, playing in all of A&M's games, and he recorded 14 tackles and 1 sack. His workload should increase this upcoming year, and we'll see if he's capable of reaching his potential. Another big-time offensive lineman that went to A&M was P.J. Williams. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 7 offensive tackle in the class, and was a reserve offensive lineman that they wanted to redshirt in order to develop. He only saw time in 1 game, but as a redshirt freshman, he was then arrested for an off-the-field incident and took to the transfer portal. Where did he end up? Well, he went over to Dallas and committed to SMU, where he played in 12 games for the Mustangs and started 4 of them at left tackle. He looks like a solid offensive lineman for SMU and someone who might be able to start for them at left tackle this season. But for whatever reason, despite getting in trouble, he felt like he needed to leave A&M to reach his full potential and will still end up in the Power 5 world with the SMU Mustangs. After that, we talk about Smoke Bowie, as he's an interesting one. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 3 corner in the class and was a depth corner piece in 2022. He showed up in 7 games and recorded 4 total tackles, but was suspended against the Miami Hurricanes for violating team rules and decided at the end of the season that he was going to transfer. While he had originally committed to Georgia, by July of 2023, it came out that he wasn't on the roster at Georgia anymore and he popped up in the portal again. But he did not sign for another school in 2023 and has been out of football since then. Obviously, right now, it looks like he's a huge bust. Another guy who was a huge bust is Denver Harris. Some sites listed him as a 5-star, but Denver was the number 7 corner in the class of 2022. I actually have a video on him on the channel if you want to search that up. His college career has been all over the place, as he started as a true freshman, logged 14 tackles and 3 pass deflections, and even became a mid-season freshman All-American. Sadly though, he got suspended in October of 2022 for a locker room incident, and because of that, he would transfer to LSU and was a top 5 player in the portal. He ended up recording 7 tackles and 2 pass deflections, and things were a disaster for him at LSU. He was not getting the playing time he wanted, and after 2023 was over, he transferred again, and now he'll be at UTSA for his junior year, and will hope to fix things there. Anae White was the number 4 edge rusher in the class of 2022 and a 4-star player. He played in 7 games as a true freshman, totaling 8 tackles and a sack. His playing time went down significantly as a sophomore, as it just ended after 5 games after he had a season-ending injury. He finished the game with 3 total tackles and 1 sack against Arkansas, and while he's in recovery for his injury, he should be a rotational piece for A&M this upcoming season, but his time in college has been disappointing. Anthony Lucas was a 5-star recruit and the number 8 defensive lineman in the class of 2022, and he was supposed to be a solid defensive line piece for A&M and played some as a true freshman, logging 10 tackles over 7 games, but was a part of a locker room incident at that South Carolina game in 2022 that left him suspended. As a result, he decided to enter the transfer portal and is now at USC. As a sophomore at USC last year, he ended up with 10 tackles and ended up playing in 13 games with 1 start. There's hope he'll continue to fight for playing time as a junior at USC and hopefully one day live up to his 5-star status. Chris Marshall's a really interesting case, as he was a 5-star recruit and the number 3 receiver in the class, and he only spent 1 year at A&M before he transferred to Ole Miss. Because of consistent suspensions and conduct violations though, he was actually cut from Ole Miss for the same thing before he even got to play. He ruined his chances at both A&M and Ole Miss, and he was also a basketball star, so he tried to play both sports, but he couldn't do that. He spent last season at Kilgore Community College and then transferred to Boise State for this upcoming season, where he'll play alongside Malachi Nelson. He's on his 4th college in 2 years, so I hope he figures it out, not just for his football career, but just for himself as a person. Unfortunately, he's a huge bust for Texas A&M. Connor Weigman was a 5-star recruit and the number 3 quarterback in the class of 2022, and he had significant hype. He played well in mop-up duty for Haynes King and Max Johnson in 2022, throwing for 896 yards and 8 touchdowns with no interceptions. He even had 338 yards and 4 touchdowns in a start against Ole Miss, and would start the last 4 games going into 2023. Last year though, he'd only play in 4 as he got hurt. He threw for 979 yards and 8 touchdowns, and he also had 2 picks before he got hurt against Auburn and would have to sit out the remainder of the year. He looks to be A&M's starter for the near future and is actually a really solid signing for them. LT Overton was a 5-star defensive lineman and the number 6 player at his position in the class. He was one of the most immediate impact players in 2022, as he got on the field quite a bit as a true freshman. He totaled 31 tackles, 12 solo, and a sack, and he disappointed in 2023. He only had 17 tackles and no sacks, and he had multiple games where he played and didn't record a stat. After the 2023 season, he decided to enter the transfer portal and transfer to Kalen DeBoer in the Alabama Crimson Tide. So, he's another 5-star bust for the Texas A&M Aggies. After that, we have to talk about Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, as he was a 5-star recruit and the number 4 defensive lineman in the class. He had originally committed to Oklahoma, but would later flip to Texas A&M. He only played in one game as a true freshman against UMass, so he ended up being redshirted. In 2023, as a redshirt freshman, he played in 5 games, totaling 3 tackles and a half sack. He's considered one of the more disappointing players in the 2022 class, but since he's so young and is still with A&M, there's still time for him to turn it around and reach the potential that scouts thought he had. Shamar Stewart was a 5-star recruit and the number 3 defensive lineman in the class, and as a true freshman in 2022, he logged 23 tackles, with 11 of them being solo, as well as 1.5 sacks and a fumble recovery. The next year in 2023 was similar. He logged 11 total tackles, with 1.5 sacks and 2 pass deflections, and he was mostly used as a rotational defensive lineman through and through. He has not lived up to expectations at A&M, but he's still at A&M and is young, so there's also hope he could turn it around too. Up next, we have another Stewart, and that is 5-star recruit and the number 1 receiver in the country, Evan Stewart. He got onto the field immediately as a true freshman, becoming a key piece for the Aggies. He caught 53 passes for 649 yards, but only had 2 touchdowns. Then this past year, he caught 38 passes for 514 yards and 4 scores, and was one of the better young receivers in the SEC. But with A&M struggling on the field and it becoming apparent that Jimbo was not going to head to a national championship, Evan decided to transfer to Oregon, where he'll play with Dylan Gabriel, fight for a championship right away, and probably play in a better offense. But we'll have to wait and see with Stewart. He's super exciting. Finally, we get to the last player on the list, and this video has taken forever. Walter Nolan was a 5-star recruit and the number 1 defensive lineman in the class, and was even ranked as highly as number 2 in the entire country. He played in 10 games as a true freshman, recording 17 tackles with a sack and a forced fumble. The next year in 2023, he had 37 total tackles in 12 games, with also 8.5 TFLs and 4 sacks. Despite how good of a recruit he was, he has been kind of a disappointment at A&M, or at minimum underwhelming, and he entered the transfer portal this